this is Caitlin here, and welcome to 2018 and the first Scribble Reviews video for 2018 in particular. Just after kind of Christmas time, going into the new year, being here in 2018, I've actually managed to find some spare time between all my work and whatnot to actually go to the cinema and see some films, which I was really hoping to do because quite a couple of things came out over the holiday period there that I was dying to see. Thankfully, I saw a couple that I was actually after to see. That was a terrible sentence there. But I've got a couple of reviews that I want to put out for films and whatnot. Again, guys, normally, if you've never watched any of my kind of like film review ones, usually it's just mainly me giving like my own personal thoughts and opinions. So maybe I talk about a film that you in particular loved or you particularly hated. Obviously, it's just my personal experience, so people will have differing opinions on films and whatnot. I'm just giving you how I felt about the film, some of the stuff I liked and whatever. I do sometimes talk about spoilers, so bearing in mind that before I go into it, you already know which film I'm talking about because it's in the description down below or in the title, but I will be discussing some spoilers just to like accentuate some of my points that I want to make. So if you have not seen this film in particular, then please be sure to go and watch it first before you watch this review from me, because I am going to mention some spoilers because that's really the only best way I feel like I can be able to talk about it, because I've seen it, maybe you haven't seen it, whatever, you may be not understanding what I'm talking about, so bear in mind, I would also advise to see the film before you watch this video. So going into it now, the first one of 2018 that I want to talk about is the new Jumanji film, which from what I've read and whatnot, it seems to be quite a split decision, a real kind of mood board of opinions in terms of this film in particular. Now, I can understand why, the reason, because one, you are touching upon a property or a kind of established title that has a lot of love, a lot of hardcore fans. It's got quite a lot of backing behind it, you know, in terms of like the original Jumanji. You know, obviously Robin Williams was part of it. You know, it's iconic, it's a classic, and now you're taking the small concept of it and you're reworking it to the modern time. I can understand why a lot of people would hate this idea, because it's happened so many times before where you've taken like an intellectual property or something, you've tried to revamp it for the current generation and whatnot, and it goes terribly, terribly wrong, or you feel like it's butchered something you love and all this stuff. So I feel like, in my mindset, I enjoyed the original Jumanji film. I enjoyed it, certainly. In a sense, if I remove my enjoyment of that film from looking at this new take directly, I can say I enjoyed this film. I wouldn't say it was like stellar or amazing or made me cry or any of that. I would say it was enjoyable. It was an experience that you know, I didn't hate, I didn't dislike. I laughed at a couple of jokes and whatnot. And certainly I enjoyed the actors. I'm a big fan of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'm a big fan of him. I like Karen Gillan. I like Jack Black. And I do like Kevin Hart. There's maybe some films I've not liked him in especially. But in some of the other, like, more recent stuff I've seen him in, I've enjoyed him as an actor. So yeah, I enjoyed those actors and whatnot. Now, if you are someone who, say, was a hardcore fan of the original film, I can very much understand why you would hate this, because obviously it changes quite a lot of the original concepts from the original film and whatnot. Obviously, Jumanji is now a video game, which is now, I believe, a cartridge game, if I remember correctly. And I believe they've changed some of the, obviously, the mechanics and whatnot, because instead of like the actual, I think, the way that it's been worded, like, instead of you being sucked in, like, the board game coming to life into the real world, you are instead sucked into the game itself via the video game. So I feel like they did that in order to get away with a couple of things. I feel like it wouldn't have worked if you made the video game come out of into the real world. I feel like maybe they'd be feeling like they're tripping into some different territories. But then again, them going inside the video game isn't exactly, you know, the most original take on it either. But I can understand why they made that decision and whatnot. I feel like after doing that, it's like it kind of took away from like the original concept of Jumanji, what made it special, because now it just feels like it could have been literally any video game. It didn't have to be Jumanji, and it would have worked. Like, you could have called it something else. You could have called it Welcome to the Jungle, since that's been, you know, the tagline for it all the time. You could have called it that. Wouldn't have made any difference. I feel like maybe they put in Jumanji as the name of it to try and draw people into it. But other than that, going into it, trying to forget that it's related to, well, because it insists it's related to it very, very loosely. The original film, they don't really reference too much of the original film, but going into it, it seems alright. You've got your cast of characters, you've got your kind of dweeby geeky guy, you've got the high school football player jock, there's like the kind of loner girl, and there's also like the kind of Instagram famous girl or whatever. She's checking her phone all the time and blah blah blah. They get sucked into the game. They become the avatars in the game and whatnot. You know, they change personality. I feel like out of all of them, my favorite was Jack Black, because he was obviously having to channel the Instagram girl the entire time. And I don't know why, that made me laugh the most. Just hearing Jack Black talk like that, I think, was what made me die the most of the time. You know, him trying to teach Karen Gillan how to walk sexy and all this stuff and flirt with guys, I thought was really funny. I did like how many times they referenced to like Dwayne the Rock Johnson's smolder. Like, I felt like they were making fun of that, obviously, because they're like akin to like kind of Disney princess and whatnot, and the smolder that they've got going on. They kind of did that with the Rock and everything and all this stuff. So I enjoyed that aspect of it as well. In terms of like the kind of the driving force of the game, obviously they need to complete the game in order to escape it and whatnot. And they have this concept of, since it's a video game, they've got lives. They've only got so many lives before apparently they'll die for good. So they've like, if it feels like there's not really a time limit to it, obviously, because they're inside the game. Basically, the time limit is how fast they get to places. So really, the only like kind of like thing pushing them along is the fact that they really want to get home, and they know they've only got 3 lives because they're like tattooed on their wrists and whatnot, so they can see. So that's really the only thing pushing them, and obviously the idea that if they lose all their lives, they'll die for good. One of the things that I was also thinking about in particular was the quote-unquote villain. I get that he's meant to be like, I feel like they're trying to play a little bit of homage to like kind of cheesy video game villains and whatnot from like yesteryear and all that, like the 90s and everything. Like, it feels like that's like what they were trying to make fun of and everything like that. The villain in particular, I felt like he wasn't really that good. Like, his concept was a little bit good. Like, so the villain, like, this is the video game story. So, like, the villain is like an archaeologist. He's looking for this jewel that lives in Jumanji or whatever. He says he wants to investigate it. He takes the gem, and as soon as he takes it, like, a curse falls on Jumanji. He is now in control or possessing all the animals that live in Jumanji, and therefore what they see, he can see whatever. And it seems like gradually, the more he has it, like, the worse it gets. Like, you see it, like, his eyes starts like turning green and everything. Like, he has animals living inside him, like centipedes like crawl out of his ears. He's got spiders going in like in and out of his sleeves and all this stuff, and like scorpions coming out of his mouth and everything. So it feels like, okay, he's kind of cool. But he's also kind of like one-dimensional and whatnot, because it's like, okay, why do you need to keep the jewel? Because it's established that he doesn't have the jewel throughout the entire film. So, like, it's somewhere else. You manage to get it somewhere else. The main cast get it. But it's like, at the same time, he doesn't need the jewel in order to keep all his powers, because he's still got the power to see through all the animals' eyes. He can command them and whatnot and everything. So at the time, it's like, okay, if he can still do this stuff without the gem, why does he need to keep it in particular? Because he still has all the powers. It's not like he loses the gem and he loses the powers. He still has it. The only reason he loses the powers is when eventually, by the end of the film, no wonder they solve it. They put the gem back. Apparently that lifts the curse. He loses all his powers and he explodes into like a million rats and whatnot. So it always like made me wonder, okay, so what is the point in him trying to keep the gem? Obviously he wants to keep the power and whatnot because he loses it if the gem gets put back where it belongs. But at the same time, it's like, does he really need to keep it though? Because it seems like he doesn't really need to keep it to keep his power. He just needs to keep it away from wherever it is going. So why don't you just dunk it in like the deepest pool you can find in Jumanji? Obviously it's video game logic, so he's not going to do that. But at the same time, so that seemed to be like the most obvious thing for me to like, you know, to make sense and whatnot. If you didn't need to keep a hold of the gem to keep hold of the powers and whatnot. I also found it funny in a little bit where they had the kind of stereotypical video game characters and whatnot, where obviously Dwayne The Rock Johnson as the protagonist has the best powers. I felt a little bit bad for Kevin Hart's character, because obviously he was meant to be the joke character, basically the one who dies from cake and all this stuff. So I felt quite bad for him a little bit, and how horribly, like, he'd be like the joke character that's always programmed into a game who nobody plays, because he's obviously just a joke character and he was only put in there for a laugh. Kind of similar to if you've ever played Don't Starve. Wes is like a total joke character because he's literally the worst character in the game with like barely any health. He has like no perks or whatever to playing as him. He makes the game harder for himself. So it feels like you really wouldn't want to play him. But like half the time it was like I kind of missed the original. Like I enjoyed the video game characters and whatnot. and obviously they're trying to emulate the characters of who they actually are. But I kind of felt like I missed, like, the start of the film doesn't really devote too much time, I think, to the main cast. You don't really feel too invested in them, because the main runtime of the film is in the video game, so you feel more connected to the avatars than you do to the actual characters and whatnot. Because I felt like there was a bit of a detachment there because of that. And maybe it was to the film's credit, to the film's, like, flaw and whatnot. I feel like I cared more about the avatars than I did about the actual people in the real world and whatnot. Other than that, I can't really say there's actually too much else I particularly disliked about the film. Again, I would say it's definitely not a perfect film. It definitely just feels like it could, like, without the Jumanji title, this could have been really any other film set in this kind of setting. I feel like really the Jumanji thing was only added onto it because it felt the need to try and push it to the audience. It's like, hey, this isn't just another generic kind of video game related film. This is Jumanji and whatnot. So maybe that's why it's upset a lot of people. I have heard people saying, oh, some of them have walked out during the film because it frustrated them. Others seem to have kind of somewhat enjoyed it and realized, hey, don't take it too seriously because clearly nobody else should take it seriously. I wouldn't maybe consider it truly a successor to the original Jumanji. I definitely wouldn't. I would see it as maybe like a fun little side thing, but definitely maybe not something to be taken too seriously. I would just take it as a little bit of enjoyment to enjoy. Appreciate some of the acting, appreciate some of the comedy and whatnot. Maybe not the soundtrack, because I feel like if I hear Welcome to the Jungle one more time, I'm actually going to scream, because that thing has been used so much in the trailers and the actual film itself. I felt like I was going to scream if I heard that song one more time. So I was like, I'm glad we don't have to listen to this song ever again. Hopefully, fingers crossed, please don't bring this song back or whatever. But overall, I fairly enjoyed the film. It was alright. Would I recommend it? If you don't mind that it has the Jumanji name and you can just enjoy it for what it is, a film and whatnot, then I think you will enjoy it. If you are so super hardcore into the original Jumanji and you think this is just a total, complete train wreck of the original's name, you probably won't enjoy it. But I guess it just depends on your opinion on people taking intellectual properties and doing them up for the new generation and whatnot. It will probably decide whether or not you enjoy this film. But I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on it, guys. Let me know what you thought of the film down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you have a couple of mixed opinions about that? I'm also thinking of maybe doing a series where I maybe collect comments or whatever about some of your people's opinions on like the reviews or films I go see, and maybe compile them into like a kind of question and answer kind of session maybe. I'm not too sure. I might try that for this new year. I would love to do like videos where I like look at you guys' comments and whatnot and everything. So maybe that'll be for the future. But I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I will see you all next time.